prosperity of this country.
So let me just clarify a couple things for our audience right now. As you know well, this was a state case. Donald Trump was indicted by a grand jury in New York. He was convicted by a jury of 12 New Yorkers beyond a reasonable doubt. They didn't seek this responsibility. Joe Biden, as you know, had nothing to do with this case, Senator. In fact, the Manhattan DA's investigation, this case began in 2018 when Joe Biden wasn't even the Democratic Party's presidential nominee. So let me ask you.
Why am I not surprised that the senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton, was all over the airwaves apologizing for Donald Trump, but avoiding to answer questions about Trump saying several times that he will weaponize the DOJ? Let's take a look at it, then we'll discuss it.
War all around the world. The reason why you have this weaponization of the legal system is because Joe Biden can't defend his weak, failed record, and that the American people see through it, and they remember that Donald Trump brought peace and prosperity to this country.
So let me just clarify a couple things for our audience right now. As you know well, this was a state case. Donald Trump was indicted by a grand jury in New York. He was convicted by a jury of 12 New Yorkers beyond a reasonable doubt. They didn't seek this responsibility. Joe Biden, as you know, had nothing to do with this case, Senator. In fact, the Manhattan DA's investigation, this case began in 2018 when Joe Biden wasn't even the Democratic Party's presidential nominee. So let me ask it a different way, perhaps. Did the jury get it wrong here?
Peter, I do believe the jury got it wrong. Again, the jury can only decide based on what the judge puts in front of them. Just look at what happened in this case repeatedly. Again, you had a judge who is literally a donor to Joe Biden's campaign in 2020 so he could stop Donald Trump. He should have never been presiding over this case. He introduced evidence that was highly inflammatory and prejudicial. He didn't allow President Trump to put on certain evidence and witnesses. He never even insisted the prosecution revealed the alleged underlying crime for which Donald Trump supposedly covered up in bookkeeping entries. At every turn, the judge put his finger on the scales, practically forcing the jury to reach this outcome.
You're talking about the judge, Juan Marchand. He did give $20 to Democrats, gave $15 to Joe Biden in 2020. But the appeals court, Senator, affirmed his decision to stay on the case. And as it relates to the rules, the instructions, Trump's lawyers passed on the opportunity to argue that the charges should be considered misdemeanors in the jury instructions. Republicans were attacking the judge, the jury, the legal system here, instead of letting the process play out. If Donald Trump wins on appeal, is that valid?
Well, I think there's no question Donald Trump should win on appeal.
So if he loses on appeal, would that be valid?
He's an innocent man who did nothing wrong. This judge, again, violated New York rules by giving money to Joe Biden in 2020 specifically to stop Donald Trump. I hope that the Court of Appeals in New York actually applies the law in an even-handed way, as opposed to do what this judge did, what Joe Biden's Department of Justice has done, which is bending the rules at every turn solely to stop Donald Trump. The only thing Donald Trump is guilty of is being a threat to Joe Biden's reelection.
And when you talk about what Joe Biden's Department of Justice has done, Joe Biden's Department of Justice is also right now prosecuting cases against Democrats. Robert Menendez, the Democrat of New Jersey, Henry Cuellar, the Democratic representative from Texas, and Hunter Biden. The case against Hunter Biden on those gun charges begins tomorrow. Let me ask you about what we've heard from former President Trump. At the first official event of this re-election campaign, Donald Trump proclaimed, "I am your retribution." He talks about seeking revenge against his political enemies and says he will appoint a special prosecutor to, in his words, go after Joe Biden and his family. If it's so objectionable for the justice system to be, as you say, weaponized against Donald Trump, why is it acceptable for Donald Trump to campaign on weaponizing the DOJ against Joe Biden?
Well, first off, Peter, let me just go back to the points you made about prosecuting certain Democrats like Bob Menendez and Henry Cuellar. I've noticed that Joe Biden's Department of Justice tends to target the Democrats that are critical of Joe Biden. Bob Menendez criticizes him for his weak Iran policy.
So he's weaponizing it against people that don't like him.
Henry Cuellar criticizes the president's immigration policy. They're investigating the mayor of New York because he has criticized Joe Biden's immigration policy.
How about his own son, Hunter Biden? The case begins tomorrow.
Hunter Biden is guilty of so many crimes he can barely even keep track of them, unlike Donald Trump, for whom they never even revealed the alleged crime that he supposedly tried to cover up.
So just to be clear, though, if he was weaponizing the Justice Department, wouldn't he want to keep any case away from his own son?
He was forced. His own Justice Department tried to rig a settlement. They were forced by a judge asking questions of the prosecutor and Hunter Biden's defense attorneys.
But wouldn't he get rid of it completely? Why would he weaponize it against his own son and just get rid of the case altogether, by your argument?
Well, because he's going to pardon his own son after the election. And that's what you should ask Joe Biden at the White House sometime is, do you commit to not pardon Hunter Biden after the election?
Let me go back, Senator, to my initial question, which is if it's so objectionable for the justice system, to, as you say, to be weaponized by Joe Biden against Donald Trump, why is it appropriate for Donald Trump to campaign on weaponizing it against Joe Biden?
Donald Trump has said that his so-called retribution will be success at the ballot box.
Well, he also said an eye for an eye, so he hasn't just said it's success.
In 2016, when so many people insisted that Hillary Clinton should face criminal charges for doing exactly what Donald Trump was wrongly accused of doing, which is mischaracterizing legal expenses as something else. Remember, she paid for the dirty Russian dossier. They characterized it as legal expenses. She paid a fine to the FEC. Donald Trump specifically said he would not prosecute Hillary Clinton because that's not what we do in America. What the Democrats have done in New York is like something that would happen in Pakistan or Brazil. It's something that America would sanction another country for engaging in election interference.
Locking up Hillary Clinton.
And he said after the election that that's not what we do in America. If New York was
a foreign... But he campaigned on it and then after said he wouldn't do it? I guess let's get back to the question about...
Peter, if New York was a foreign country, America would sanction them for trying to target, through weaponization of the legal system, their political opponents and rigging election outcomes.
Are you okay, then, with Donald Trump saying he will weaponize the DOJ against Joe Biden?
He has said repeatedly that this should never happen. It shouldn't happen to him. It shouldn't happen to Hillary Clinton.
But he's campaigning on that very basis.
Peter, we've been down this road before. In 2016, people called for Hillary Clinton to be prosecuted. She probably deserved it. Donald Trump said that's not what we do in America to someone who loses an election like Hillary Clinton.
So you disagree with Senator Marco Rubio, who says he should get even?
Donald Trump has said, as recently as last month, that his retribution will be success. Success at the election and then restoring the peace and prosperity that he brought to America for 4 years that Joe Biden has destroyed.
Since Thursday's verdict, there has been a spike in violent rhetoric online directed toward the jurors in particular, including calls to publish their addresses, physical attacks. Will you condemn those threats?
Well, Peter, I don't know what obscure websites that you've gone to.
Well, no, this is from Truth Social. It's not an obscure website. An individual says, I hope every juror is doxxed and they pay for what they have done. May God strike them dead. We will on November 5th and they will pay. You can condemn that threat, can't you?
Again, I will always say that violence has no place in our politics. Again, I don't know what obscure account you found on social media that said that.
It's on Truth Social. It's on his website.
Made are true. Some are half true. All of them went through this judicial process, and there's still an appeals process. So the day will come when Donald Trump and his lawyers will be able to make all of these points publicly. On the political front, I am curious, as a potential VP pick for the former president, does it give you pause to be potentially on the ticket with now a convicted felon?
No, I support Donald Trump more strongly than ever because, again, he was being charged with these sham indictments precisely because he's the Republican nominee for president, precisely because he is the leader of a party that's going to help repair the damage that the Democrats have inflicted on working families for the last 4 years. So I'm going to continue to support Donald Trump strongly, work to elect him to the White House, work to elect a working Republican majority to the Congress to help implement an agenda that will begin to repair the damage that Joe Biden has inflicted on America.
Senator, it's Vlad. I just want to hone in a little bit on what Tony was suggesting. Are you telling the American people then that if a outcome with a jury of the former president's peers is not to your liking, then it's a rigged judicial system? If an election is not won by your preferred candidate, then the entire election system in the United States is rigged. Is that the civics lesson that we're now sharing with the American people?
Well, Vlad, let's be clear. I respect the jury system. I follow the evidence in this case very closely, though. I think the jury made a mistake, in no small part because you had a partisan judge misleading them every single turn. He gave them instructions that they didn't even have to unanimously find that President Trump covered up a specific crime. He didn't let them see the evidence that President Trump wanted to put in the case. He didn't.
Tom Cotton, the Republican senator from Arkansas, made headlines with his appearance on NBC's Meet the Press on June 2nd, 2024. During the interview, Cotton addressed several key issues, including the 2024 presidential election, the potential of being Donald Trump's running mate, and the January 6th Capitol riots. Cotton stated that he would accept the results of the 2024 presidential election, provided it is fair and free. He emphasized that Congress lacks the constitutional authority to reject electors certified by states, a stance he maintained during the 2020 election certification. While acknowledging rumors of being on Trump's shortlist for the vice presidential nomination, Cotton played coy, stating, "I have not talked to the president or his campaign about his vice presidential selection or any position in his administration." However, he added that any great patriot would have to consider serving the country if offered such an opportunity by the president. In a controversial stance, Cotton suggested that those charged with silly misdemeanors related to the January 6th Capitol riots, such as parading without a permit or damaging public property, should be considered for pardons, and in many cases, granted pardons. This marks a shift from his previous characterization of the rioters as insurrectionists who should face the full extent of the law. Cotton also weighed in on Trump's recent conviction in the New York hush money case, stating, "I think the jury got it wrong." He expressed confidence that the Supreme Court would overturn the convictions of January 6th participants charged with obstructing an official proceeding, citing the pending Fisher v. U.S. case. Cotton's statements have sparked debates across the political spectrum, with some praising his commitment to democratic norms and others criticizing his apparent alignment with Trump's positions in pursuit of the vice presidential nomination.